Oh, hello there, and welcome to Phil Talking D20. So, in today's video, we are diving into the city of Absalom, updated for the Lost Omens setting. So, this book is quite a daunting beast. There is a huge cacophony of information buried within its depths. It's basically literally a travel guide to Absalom in its entirety, and some of it is a bit overwhelming. There's one particular bit to kind of get some of the kind of the negatives out of the way early doors. There is a list of NPCs which feels like it's a million miles long, and is kind of just kind of one NPC, another NPC, another NPC, another NPC, another NPC, another NPC, and it's kind of just like, what am I doing with all these NPCs? So that's not necessarily a bad thing. And what I mean by that is that this is a book that you don't run a game from live. This is a book that you take notes from. It's a book that you make page references about. It's a book that you use to prep a session. You do not want to be in a situation where you're just like, oh, I'm not sure, I'll check the book. Oh, I'm not sure, I'll check the book. It's a preparation tool. It's something that you're going to want to use to kind of really enrich and fill out a game with, but you're going to have to pre-prep it. And that's not a bad thing, because the level of detail is fantastic, and it's incredibly rich. And like I said, it is literally like a travel guide. So to give you a kind of an overview of the contents, that side of things is fairly straightforward. But we'll kind of dive into what makes it kind of unique and interesting. There is a brilliant timeline that gives you an extensive history of all the key points, major sieges, major shifts in internal kind of power structures within the city, how certain entities or organizations rose to prominence, and that moves it into the kind of the Lost Omens settings, because there is already a Pathfinder 1 book about Absalom that's available and out there. So this updates it into the current kind of historical meta fluff, if you like. So there's a great kind of timeline, and a lot of those points you could almost easily kind of build out kind of campaigns from them. There's some really kind of quite spectacular sieges, because obviously Absalom, the city at the center of the world, the Starstone Isle, literally the Starstone that can turn mortals into gods. I mean, just from a trade perspective alone, the city is colossally powerful and massively wealthy, and is a massive kind of influence on the world. And if you got control of it, you would be rich beyond your wildest dreams, before you then consider that there is a stone that turns mortals into gods. So if you thought maybe, oh, why would I be motivated to try and take this city? Well, you would become the richest person in the world with the potential to also become a god. That's a fairly big draw for anything, anywhere on Golarion, and in the kind of planar, versus beyond that. So, devils, undead, anything you can think, pirate warlords assembling like massive fleets of pirate ships, dragons, anything you can think of in the lore has tried to kind of pile in and take the city, and the city has never fallen because it's hugely rich. It has massive kind of resource control, and it has advantageous kind of technology and magic from the kind of the Aslanti Empire that also helps kind of move things along. So that kind of aspect alone is pretty cool. But then you kind of move on, and it starts to kind of move into the NPCs that I've already kind of touched on, where there's this list of lots of prominent people. They do a better job of breaking those NPCs down when you get into specific chapters. So you can kind of get an idea about where they fit in based on the regions, if you like, of the city. And from that kind of a perspective, so they do this thing where they talk about Absalom as a settlement using the settlement block that we've seen in previous kind of iterations. It's a grand council that govern the city on the whole. Population around 300,000. There's a breakdown of kind of racial ethnicities that are kind of present and around. All and any languages and religions are present, which is quite a cool, interesting kind of talking point we'll come on to. There's primary imports, primary exports, threats, so that you can kind of start to get a feel of what's coming up in the book. These include political unrest over the missing Primarch. Ooh, mysterious. Already kind of touching on some things that are detailed later on in the book. External sieges, thieves guilds, gang uprising, cult plots, noble machinations for power, clashes between houses of rival nations, firebrand provocations, monstrous activity in the Undercity. Now, that's a fairly simplistic list, but one of the things that's really quite cool is that when we go into each of the sections, they really do a good job of explaining how these factions kind of interact and what they are motivated by and what they want and how they're trying to get it, to help you kind of get a grip on that from a campaign building perspective. Because, like I said, there's a lot that's touched on. They detail each of the sections of the city. There's a brief overview. So the classic that we've mentioned, obviously, is the Starstone. So Ascendant Court. Viewed by many as the heart of Absalom, the Ascendant Court is home to the Starstone Cathedral, where any visitor might someday join the other ascended gods. Surrounding the massive temple are the dizzying array of shrines, churches, and holy places, where faithful from all manner of religions pay tribute. Within this district, one can find adherents or sites dedicated to many rare or persecuted religions, since Absalom is tolerant of all theologies, as long as worshippers respect the laws of Absalom first. Which basically means if you want to go and visit a temple of Asmodeus, the devil of contracts, you'll be surprised to find that he's quite popular. The reason he's kind of undercurrently popular is because it's a city of trade. It's a city of bargaining. It's a city of kind of law and order. And that means that there's levers that are trying to be pulled. There's people trying to kind of get one over on someone else. There's people trying to get a contract through that kind of favours them in a business deal. And so I imagine that the Temple of Asmodeus has a pretty good line of work with its legal lawyer department when it comes to stitching over people's rivals. And that's just kind of one very kind of simple kind of concept that's replicated across huge spans of kind of the city, its regions, and its movers and shakers in terms of organizations and entities. So there are magical academies, there are thieves guilds, there's all manner of guilds, in fairness, farmers guilds and, sea merchantmen guilds. Those are already kind of entities, some more powerful than others, all vying for their kind of piece of the pie. You've got a wonderfully rich kind of detailed look at transportation, what magical mounts and types of vehicle and types of service move citizens around the city. There is a section that talks about the vices that are available to ne'er-do-wells within the city, what kind of drugs and kind of illicit substances and their effects that are available within the city's districts. There's a brilliant section talking all about the architecture with some wonderful artwork and how certain cultures at certain times had more influence than others, and so they influenced the overall architectural design in certain regions or certain districts, I should say, amongst the city. There are ceremonies detailed for where they're relevant, certain kind of parts of the city. Ceremonies obviously also then go on to things like celebrations, what kind of events take place, parades, processions, plays and performances, entertainment that's available in certain districts, and what kind of things you can expect. The customs of kind of cultural groups within the city, both from an organization based type of kind of event, but also kind of a cultural based kind of event, which is quite nice. So, from a level of detail, there's something that you can get from this that doesn't necessarily have to apply to Absalom. There'd be things in here that you can lift out because perhaps you're in a certain part of Golarion where you actually go, actually, Joe, I'm going to grab that. I'm going to put it in my campaign because I've been trying to look for something like this. What else is there? Another nice touch. There is a whole new ancestry, Gilman, which is basically aquatic humanoid. And again, there is some detailed kind of rundown on some equipment for them. There's some, I suppose, detailed NPCs that are specifically Gilman to kind of enrich that. So if you're toying with perhaps something that's going to involve a bit of an underwater campaign, maybe a pirate campaign, and players are looking at options, there's a whole new ancestry in here, which I didn't actually expect, so that's pretty cool. You've got an array of rules that detail how to give bonuses to all sorts of different checks based on what's available in the city. Obvious example of this, a library will give you +1 on recall knowledge, and if it's a particular kind of thing you're looking for, then maybe these certain libraries that are detailed in these parts of the city would be beneficial to visit to get that bonus on a roll. Often these bonuses are only around kind of +1, you maybe a +2 in certain circumstances, but they're quite a nice mechanic to kind of flavour and represent the advantage that cities have. Others examples of this are bonuses on your ability to kind of live and get by, those kind of earn an income checks. So certain areas of the city that have a focus or a kind of a gearing towards particular industries or particular ways of life, those kind of checks to do those kind of jobs, maybe like blacksmithing, for example, or being a bard or an entertainer, or perhaps a practicing wizard looking to kind of earn some income. That's an option that's available to you. Retraining services, do you know what I mean? All this kind of stuff is really well laid out. And once you get past that kind of early barrage of kind of like, here's everything that you're going into, where they try and give you like an overview of everything that you can expect. When they start getting into the specific chapters, it becomes a lot easier to understand the preface that you kind of slightly kind of get overwhelmed by. So when you get into the chapter about the coins, it makes a lot more sense, because it starts to break down the purpose, the function of the coins, the specific locations. And we've not even talked about the maps. There's a big overview map of the whole city and parts of the island. There is then in each specific chapter of each specific quarter, of which there's quite a long list. Hang on, let me just quickly pan back through to that, because that's quite helpful. So I suppose the rundown of areas. You've got the Ascendant Court, you've got the coins, the docks, Eastgate, the Foreign Quarter, the Ivy District, the Petal District, the Precipice Quarter, the Puddles, Westgate, Wise Quarter. You've got the Undercity, you've got the Keeps, the outskirts, the walls, the gatehouses. All these are kind of laid out, and as you're working your way through each section, there's bits of side fluff about noble houses, things that are going on, events that have taken place, these timelines that kind of give you this idea and this overview. Lots of cool artwork as well. Like I said, this is a prep tool. It is a resource that you're going to want to work at as a GM to enrich a session. This is going to be you're not going to want to have to constantly check back to this book blind. You're going to want to make some notes. You're going to want to make some page references. You want to try and get a handle on an area, and you're going to want to hope that they generally don't suddenly go, we've gone to this area, and then suddenly they leg it straight into another one. Because there is so much that is available to players that it's going to be that kind of process of doing a good job of feeding it out, because you could make the mistake as a games master of doing a lot of telling and not a lot of showing, in the way that you spend too long trying to tell the players everything they might find or what they kind of might experience. On the subject of experiences, there's breakdowns even of what kind of smells and sights and kind of food cultures are available as you travel through the city, like street food. I don't know about you, but my YouTube channel regularly kind of feed, I should say, will occasionally throw Korean street food at me. So they'll be like, look, there's this kind of street food and that kind of street food, and this is how they cook this, and this is how they cook that, as you kind of, are just walking down the street. Like I said, it's literally like a travel guide. There is that available in the kind of key sections as you're working through this book. It's not the kind of book that you read bits of and then that's enough. Like, you're going to want to, which is kind of why I've been working on it, because I wanted to try and get enough of an overview that I can kind of give you a good overview, because there's too much for me to sit and go through piece by piece, but also I want to make sure that you've got an understanding of that there is a lot of content here. Now, is this book absolutely critical to you as a games master or you as a player? No, it isn't, unless you are running something in a city. And it doesn't have to be Absalom. I think one of the real key advantages that this book will give you as a games master is that it gives you lots and lots and lots of ideas and examples of points of interest and points of friction and adventure in a city. The things that are so richly detailed in this book about Absalom, to an extent, you could say, without some of the fantasy elements, are taking place in cities like London and New York and Madrid. They are the classic clashings of people lusting for power, people laundering money. I mean, in the current climate, certain elements of this book are quite relevant in the way that, there are kind of foreign agents at play trying to kind of undermine and gain advantage. So in this instance, we're talking about Chalaxians trying to kind of, get up to kind of ne'er-do-wellian shenanigans to kind of try and perhaps unstabilize the city. But they're just one faction of many, and it's a melting pot. You've got the ability to run a campaign from 1st to 20th level without leaving the city. Every location has a purpose. Every location has things that are unique that are going on there. The crime factions, the kind of the criminal kind of gangs, some of which aren't particularly powerful or particularly big, some of which specialize in assassination or kind of classical kind of mafia tropes. But there's all these different elements that you could, as a character, start to tackle and deal with and grow in level and find new challenges. There, again, the classic example of the different kind of political power struggles that people are going to get caught up in. There's almost elements that you can lift from things like cyberpunk, where there is this generally accepted view in cyberpunk that corporations will use assassins, corporations will use spies to steal content, ideas, murder key executives. Those kind of classic cyberpunk tropes that really aren't unique to that setting, but kind of are pigeonholed very strongly into it. really apply here in Absalom to give you, I suppose, an idea of the meta, if you like, that's available to games masters and players. But then there are just straight up monstrous encounters. There's all sorts of opportunity for dangerous beasts and kind of classical villainous undead foes like vampires and things. All of these things are in the maelstrom of the city. And if you don't want it to be Absalom, and you maybe just lift certain elements that make up a core of a city that you would like to have in your world, taking parts of it and building a new city in a new part of Golarion, or a homebrew world, this gives you a great jumping off point for doing that. So don't look at it as just Absalom. Don't look at it as just, well, that's what that is. It is also a really unique toolbox to give you ideas and give you jumping off points and give you kind of fluff, flavor, rules, and campaign hooks for any kind of major urban location on Golarion or any other kind of fantasy medieval world that you may endeavor to kind of create. So I highly recommend it. I think it's, like I said, it's not essential, but it is definitely the kind of location based lore flavor book that is going to be a real asset to games masters and really important to people that love the lore of Golarion. Again, just from a perspective of expanding your knowledge of the Pathfinder world of Golarion as it stands in the Lost Omens world. It's a really powerful tome to help you kind of build on who's doing what and why this city is so important and how it influences the rest of the world and how that might affect your games or simply expand the story for you. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you pick the book up. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay posted for more content. I'm looking to do reviews upcoming for the Book of the Dead, which is awesome, and also the Knights of Last War, which is also awesome. No spoilers, I'm not allowed. It's obviously coming out sometime in April. I think we're about 5 weeks, 6 weeks down from when it comes out to you, the general public. I got a review copy that was gifted to me by Paizo because they're lovely people. But obviously, stay classy, stay safe, like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.